Have you ever wondered why some people remain calm even when their entire world collapses around them? Why, while others scream and panic, a few simply breathe, look at the chaos, and still smile? Marcus Aurelius was one of those rare souls. A man who ruled an empire, commanded armies, and carried the unbearable weight of the Roman world on his shoulders, yet somehow, he never lost his calm. But here's the strange part. Marcus didn't live in peace. He lived in storms. He fought wars, witnessed betrayal, lost his children, and wrote his thoughts alone in his tent while thunder rolled outside. The world saw an emperor, but inside, he was a man constantly fighting himself. He once asked himself, what disturbs your mind more, the world outside, or the storm within? That single question changed everything. And today, it might change you too. Because the truth is, no one escapes life's chaos. Not emperors, not warriors, not you. But Marcus found something rare, a way to stay calm when the world burns. He discovered 13 lessons that allowed him to master his mind, to stand still while others fell apart. These lessons were never meant for the public. They were his private words, written in his journal, a collection of thoughts he titled, to himself, what we now call meditations. They were never written for fame or praise. They were written for survival. So before we begin, take a breath, and imagine this. You are Marcus Aurelius. It's dawn in the Roman camp. The world smells of iron and smoke. You hear soldiers sharpening their blades, knowing many won't live to see tomorrow. The empire is collapsing under rebellion, and betrayal hides in every shadow. But instead of rage, instead of fear, you write. Your candle flickers as you whisper to yourself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is lesson 1, control the inner fortress. Marcus understood that calmness isn't built in comfort, it's built in chaos. The Stoics believed that peace is not found when the storm ends, but when you learn to stand in the rain without trembling. He wrote that the mind is like a fortress, and only you can guard its gates. The outside world can roar, insult, and destroy everything you own, but it cannot touch your mind unless you open the door. That is the first lesson. Don't fight for control of the world, fight for control of yourself. Think about it. Every day, you wake up to problems, people, news, noise, all trying to invade your peace. You react, get angry, overthink, and by noon, your calm is gone. Marcus would say, you have surrendered your fortress. He trained himself to guard it with silence. When insulted, he didn't respond with anger. When defeated, he didn't drown in despair. He paused, reflected, and whispered to himself. It's not the thing itself that disturbs you, but your opinion about it. That simple thought, to pause before reacting, became his armor. Because calmness is not about being emotionless. It's about being unmoved by what doesn't deserve to move you. But how do you build that kind of control? Marcus practiced a ritual. Each morning, before stepping into the chaos of the empire, he would remind himself. Today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, jealous, and surly. But they are like this because they do not know good from evil. He prepared his mind before the world could test it. That's lesson 2, expect the chaos before it arrives. Most of us get angry because we expect peace. We expect people to be kind, life to be fair, the day to go smoothly. And when it doesn't, we collapse. Marcus expected the storm. He didn't ask for peace. He prepared for battle, and that preparation made him calm. He knew that serenity isn't a gift, it's training. And the moment you start expecting difficulty, you stop being shocked by it. Every disappointment becomes smaller. Every insult becomes lighter. And that is how the Stoic mind stays still, not by denying pain, but by anticipating it. So, as the Emperor of Rome sat beneath his flickering candle, writing to himself in silence, he wasn't just recording philosophy. He was building an inner empire, one stronger than Rome itself. Because when the wars would end, and the palaces would crumble, only one thing would remain unshaken, the calm within him. They say power shows a man's true nature, but Marcus Aurelius discovered something darker. Power reveals how fragile peace truly is. He ruled one of the greatest empires on earth, yet found himself surrounded by whispers, envy, and deceit. The closer a man stood to the throne, the deeper his dagger could reach. But Marcus didn't just face betrayal from senators and generals. The most painful wound came from his own blood, his son Commodus. Imagine it. You've spent your entire life mastering your mind, controlling your emotions, building a fortress of calm, only to watch the person you love most become the very chaos you spent your life avoiding. Commodus was wild, arrogant, hungry for pleasure and praise. He was everything Marcus had trained himself not to be. And that was the emperor's greatest test. He could control armies, but he couldn't control the heart of his son. He could calm nations, but not his own bloodline. It was then Marcus wrote another lesson in his journal. When someone does wrong, the harm is to themselves, not to you. That was lesson 3, do not be disturbed by the actions of others. Marcus realized that anger only gives your peace away. When others act with cruelty or ignorance, you lose twice, once because they wronged you, and again because you let it live in your mind. So he refused to hate his enemies, and he refused to resent his son. He wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. He learned that staying calm doesn't mean being weak, it means being unshakable. It means standing firm while others fall into madness. Even as betrayal grew around him, Marcus practiced the art of stillness. He met deceit with discipline. He met noise with silence. Because silence, for the Stoic, was not emptiness. It was strength. He trained himself to look at every insult, every act of betrayal, and ask, will this matter in death? That's lesson 4, remember death often, and life will disturb you less. Marcus faced death daily, in wars, in sickness, in the loss of his children. But instead of fear, he found calmness in its certainty. He wrote, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Every breath became sacred, every moment, a chance to practice peace. When you remember death, you stop wasting life on anger. You stop being shaken by what won't matter in the end. Because nothing is permanent, not power, not pain, not even betrayal. And Marcus saw that clearly. He ruled knowing he would soon be dust, his empire forgotten, his name faded, but his inner peace, that, he believed, could live beyond him. So he practiced a strange kind of detachment, not from love, but from expectation. That's lesson 5, expect nothing, appreciate everything. He would write gratitude letters to life itself, even on the darkest days. When sickness spread through his army, he thanked the universe for another chance to practice endurance. When friends betrayed him, he thanked life for teaching him detachment. He once wrote, when you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to love, to act. For Marcus, calmness wasn't the absence of emotion, it was the presence of perspective. He realized that everything is borrowed, every friend, every success, every breath. And the moment you start treating things as borrowed, you stop clinging. You stop panicking when they're taken away. That's the secret the modern world forgets. You can't stay calm if you think everything belongs to you. But if you realize nothing truly does, peace follows you everywhere. And so, when the empire shook beneath rebellion and disease, Marcus did not rage against fate. He looked at the chaos, whispered a quiet, thank you, and continued writing. Because to him, calmness was not passive, it was rebellion. It was defiance against fate itself. He didn't try to control what he couldn't. He only controlled the one thing that was his to command, his mind. And that mind, quiet, still, and unbroken, became the one empire no one could ever conquer. There are moments in life when even emperors fall to their knees, not because of defeat on the battlefield, but because of defeat within the heart. For Marcus Aurelius, that moment came not from rebellion or betrayal, but from loss. He had buried children before. But this one broke something inside him. A father, holding his child's lifeless hand, realizing that no wisdom, no philosophy, no crown could save what he loved most. In that silence, Marcus faced the hardest truth of all. Calmness means accepting what you cannot change. He wrote, do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. That was lesson 6, accept what you cannot control. Pain was not the enemy, resistance was. The Stoics taught that suffering only grows when you fight what already is. Marcus stopped asking, why me? And began asking, what now? He learned that grief itself could be a teacher, if faced with courage, not denial. He wrote his pain into his journal, transforming sorrow into strength. And each line he wrote became a step out of despair. He once whispered to himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To him, obstacles were not curses, they were instructions. Every tragedy carried within it a lesson, waiting to be seen by a calm mind. And so came lesson 7, turn pain into purpose. Marcus knew that calmness isn't about escaping pain, it's about using it. When his heart broke, he didn't run from the world, he became gentler, wiser, more disciplined. He turned heartbreak into humility. He turned suffering into understanding. That's what made him different from the rest, he didn't waste his suffering. He once wrote, "The universe works only through transformation." To him, everything, even grief, was part of a larger order he could not yet see. That was lesson 8, trust the order of the universe. Even when chaos raged, Marcus believed that everything unfolded as it must. He imagined himself as part of a vast design, a single note in a grand symphony he could not fully hear. That belief gave him peace when logic failed. Because when the world seems unfair, when you've lost what you love, and when nothing makes sense, the Stoic way is not to demand answers, but to trust that meaning will come later. He didn't call it fate. He called it nature. And his duty, he said, was simply to live according to it, honestly, courageously, calmly. But there was one more battle Marcus had to face, not against betrayal, not against loss, but against himself. The mind, the same mind that once brought him peace, began to turn against him. Exhaustion, grief, and sickness crept in. The emperor's body was weakening. And in those final years, he wrote his most haunting words. "You have been made a citizen of this great city of the world. Do not be a stranger in it." That was lesson 9, you are a part of something greater. Marcus realized that calmness comes from perspective, from remembering that life isn't about you alone. He saw himself not as a ruler, but as a servant of humanity, a tiny part of something eternal. When you zoom out far enough, when you see how small you truly are in the grand scheme, every worry begins to shrink. Every insult becomes meaningless. Every loss becomes a chapter, not the whole story. That's what Marcus mastered, the art of zooming out. And once you do that, the storms of life can no longer drown you. Because how can the ocean destroy a drop of water that knows it is the ocean? So as he closed his eyes each night, the emperor who had lost children, faced betrayal, and fought endless wars, smiled quietly and whispered, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Keep your mind pure and your heart still." That was his ritual of calm, the emperor's prayer to himself. And that prayer still echoes through time. Through your chaos, through your storms, through every sleepless night you've faced wondering how to stay calm when everything burns. Marcus left us a message, written not for power, not for glory, but for survival. A message that says, peace is not the absence of struggle. It is the strength to stand within it. The empire was falling apart. The wars had drained its strength, the plague had stolen its people, and the emperor, Marcus Aurelius, was dying. He could feel it in his bones. Each breath grew shorter, the weight of years pressing down like stone. Yet even as death approached, he did not fear it. He did not pray for more time. He only whispered to himself, calm, steady, unbroken. It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live. This was lesson 10, do not fear the end. To Marcus, death was not an interruption, it was completion. The final act of nature. Just as leaves fall when their time has come, so must every life return to the soil it rose from. And he believed that the one who has lived with virtue has already lived enough. He taught that the true tragedy is not dying, but living in constant distraction, never realizing how precious this moment already is. That realization made him calm, even as his body decayed. He no longer clung to what was leaving him. He only focused on what remained under his control, his thoughts. And that brings us to lesson 11, the mind is its own kingdom. Marcus wrote, a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. The world around him was chaos, enemies, disease, decay, yet inside his mind, he was still emperor. He ruled that inner kingdom with order, with reason, with silence. And that's the secret most of us forget. You cannot control how the world moves, but you can always choose how your mind moves within it. The Stoics taught that calmness is not found by fixing the world, but by mastering perception. If you decide that nothing external can harm you, then nothing ever truly will. But Marcus knew that calmness without compassion was hollow. And so came lesson 12, be kind, especially when it's hard. He wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Even in his final days, he continued to show kindness to soldiers, slaves, and strangers. He believed that cruelty was just ignorance in disguise, and to respond with anger was to add more darkness to a world already dimming. For Marcus, kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength under control. Because calmness means not letting the world make you cold. And as he lay dying, one truth became clearer than all the others. Everything he had built, the empire, the palaces, the victories, would fade. But his words, his calm, his philosophy, that would echo for centuries. He smiled faintly, closed his eyes, and whispered his final understanding. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. That was lesson 13, reality is shaped by your perception. And with that final thought, Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, the philosopher, the man who ruled himself better than he ruled the world, passed quietly into history. No grand speeches, no thunderous farewell, just silence. But in that silence, he left us a map, a way to stay calm in the chaos, to remain grounded when everything shakes, to hold peace not as an escape, but as armor. The 13 lessons he left behind still whisper the same truth he wrote beneath a dying candlelight nearly 2,000 years ago. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That sentence, simple, ancient, unbreakable, is the key to calm in a world that never stops burning. So when you wake tomorrow and chaos greets you at your door, remember Marcus. Remember the emperor who sat in storms and found stillness. Remember that peace is not found by changing the world, but by mastering how you see it. Breathe, stand still, and whisper to yourself, as Marcus once did, the universe is change, life is opinion. Then, walk forward, calm, grounded, untouchable. Because now you carry the same fire that once burned quietly in the heart of the last great Stoic emperor. The fire of control, the fire of calm, the fire of peace that no storm can steal.